Verna and Hank have to pack everything and move. They're being evicted from their home of 56 years in Thousand Oaks.
Anytime you mention my house or my wife, it's rough.
Losing the house is incredibly painful for this couple in their 80s. But it's how they lost the house that hurts the most. They say they were scammed by their own grandson.
People in the neighborhood told me all about it, but I still couldn't believe it. Not from him, I couldn't.
I just feel lost.
To the extent I wanted to commit suicide at one time, because it's just too much. Too much.
I'm hoping something will happen and we can get it back. But I don't know how, but you never know. Maybe a man upstairs will help us out.
There's a document sitting at the center of this story, a deed transfer signed 2 years before the eviction truck showed up, and the couple who signed it thought they were putting their name on a loan application, something routine, something that would help them make ends meet, something their grandson was handling for them, because that's what family does. And that is exactly what made it work.
The trouble started 2 years ago when the elderly couple needed a personal loan. Their grandson offered to help and in the process convinced them to hand over the deed to this house. That was the beginning of the end.
This is the home they thought they'd die in, a ranch-style property in Ventura County where Hank and Helen had lived for 56 years, where they raised their daughters, where their whole life had taken root. And this is where everything fell apart, not because of a stranger, not because of a cold call or a phishing email, but because of someone who sat at their kitchen table for breakfast every single morning. Scammers target the elderly, but sometimes the person doing the targeting already has a key to the front door. Here's exactly how it happened, how no one caught it until it was already over, and what Hank and Helen were left with when it was done. A ranch in Thousand Oaks, California, Hank and Helen had been there since before the moon landing. And that is not a metaphor, that is a timeline. 56 years of mortgage payments and memories, and a home that represented everything they had built together. And when CBS2 cameras arrived, the moving boxes were already stacked in the driveway.
Anytime you mention my house or my wife, it's rough.
That line was not delivered from a courtroom. That was from the driveway, while movers were loading the truck behind him. How do you lose a house you've owned for 56 years? It starts with a grandson who offers to help. 2 years before the eviction, Hank and Helen needed a personal loan, not an unusual situation for elderly Americans living on a fixed income, a gap in the budget, a short-term need, and their grandson presented himself as the solution, the one who could navigate the paperwork, the one who understood how these things worked, the trusted family member who would handle everything.
We didn't really read it.
We didn't read it.
But they were actually signing over their home where they had raised 3 daughters.
I didn't think that my grandson would do that to me. No. He would be the last person.
They've already started moving furniture, packing up decades of memories.
Where will you two go?
We don't know
yet.
The report confirms the grandson offered to help, and in the process convinced them to hand over the deed to the house. And that, the reporter notes, was the beginning of the end. They thought they were signing loan paperwork. They were not. She is not making excuses when she says that. She is describing the reality of trusting someone completely, the way you trust family, the way you trust the person who has never given you a single reason to doubt them. That trust was the weapon he used against her. Once the deed was in his name, the loan started. Over $472,000 extracted against the equity Hank and Helen had built across more than 5 decades in that house. Money they never saw, debt they never agreed to, leveraged against a deed they didn't realize they had surrendered. Hank and Helen had no idea any of this was happening. As far as they knew, They still owned their home. And then the grandson started showing it to buyers.
They came down with some computer work and they said, "Your house is for sale." And I said, "No, it's not."
They say their grandson would have them leave home, and while they were gone, realtors would show the house. Their neighbor, Doug Emerson, found out it was much worse than that.
He signed the deed to their grandson 2 years ago. He took out 2 loans on it for $425,000. He later refinanced those with another third, and he just defaulted on everything.
Think about the architecture of that for a moment. He was taking them out on Sundays, keeping them occupied, keeping them away, while strangers toured their living room, their kitchen, the bedroom where they'd slept for 56 years. He was running 2 operations at the same time, keeping his grandparents out of the way and moving the property toward a sale they never would have agreed to. The neighbors found out before Hank and Helen did. She said, no, it isn't because she believed it. She had no reason to think otherwise. The deed she thought was a loan had already been transferred 2 years earlier, but it was for sale. So Hank went to his grandson directly and asked him face to face.
I asked him outright when he came by, I said, "Is my house for sale?" He says, "Oh, no, don't worry about it." But it was for sale.
He looked his grandfather in the eye and lied. That was the last real conversation they had before the grandson defaulted on everything and disappeared. After that, he vanished. The grandson defaulted on all 3 loans. The house went to a purchasing company. Eviction proceedings began. Hank and Helen, 88 and Kepler's 7 years old, received notice that they had to leave the only home they'd known for more than half a century, and the timeline they were given was not generous.
Now, sadly, what happened to Hank and Helen is quite common. Financial fraud is the #1 type of abuse against the elderly, and in 50 to 70% of the cases, it involves family members, as in this case. Now, Hank and Helen, they're right here. Come on in. Let's talk to you both. Where are you planning to go?
We don't have a place to go right now. No place to go.
No, we had no place at all.
He didn't just steal money. He took the place where their whole life lived and left them with nowhere to go. When Hank confronted the grandson, he left and never came back.
Now, have you heard back from your grandson?
No, none at all.
We haven't heard nothing.
Nothing.
A civil lawsuit had been filed against the grandson at the time of broadcast, but no criminal charges had been filed, only an investigation described as underway. Records do not confirm any subsequent arrest or conviction beyond what the news segment provides. The legal system was moving, but it was not moving fast enough for a Wednesday eviction deadline.
Now, I understand you have filed a lawsuit in hopes of having the eviction, a judge ruling that you can stay a little longer here. Wednesday is the last day?
Yes, Wednesday is the last day.
Yeah, Wednesday is the last day.
I am so sorry. I mean, all of us are just devastated for you. How have you addressed this with your grandson? I mean, what?
No, I have no contact with him whatsoever, and I don't think he would face us. No.
Why would he do this?
That's #1 question, because we were such wonderful friends, and I didn't ever think that he would do that.
Anything for him. Every time he would come over here, she would give him food, anything else.
He'd come for breakfast every morning. Every
It's
morning.
just heartbreaking.
Yes.
So the neighbor who was the one who alerted both of you started a GoFundMe page. It is called Save Hank and Helen's Home. But in this case, they would need to raise a lot of money. The company that purchased the house is not selling it cheap. In fact, they're asking for a higher price than what the market is going for. Is it too late to save this?
No, it's impossible. It's impossible.
Yeah, I don't know how we're going to work that out, but we're going to have to find a place to go, and I hope it happens, that through this, that the other people find out that you can't live like that, do things like that to people, older people.
I understand you were looking into affordable housing, but there's a long list.
Yes, there is. There's a long list. The best I could do possibly is the end of September. That's iffy.
Then we only got a couple of days, we might have to leave here. I don't know where we're going to go yet, and we still haven't got things packed yet, what we have.
Neighbor Doug Emerson had launched a GoFundMe called Save Hank and Helen's Home, but the numbers didn't work. Wednesday was the deadline. September was the maybe. And somewhere between those two dates was an elderly couple with boxes they didn't know where to send. 50 to 70%. That is not a fringe statistic. That is the shape of the crime. And it looks like a grandson who comes for breakfast. That is the line that reframes everything, because this was not greed meeting a stranger. This was not a cold calculation against an unknown target. This was someone who had been welcomed into the most intimate rhythms of their daily life. Someone they fed, someone they loved without reservation. And he used all of that to take the one thing they could not replace. Hank and Helen spent their last days in that house, packing up decades, furniture, photographs, the kitchen where he used to sit. And Hank told the reporter he still hoped somehow they could get it back, that you never know. And sometimes hope is the last thing that doesn't get packed. If someone you love, family included, asks you to sign anything involving your home, stop. Get an independent attorney before you touch that pen. Not their attorney, yours. Someone who represents only your interests and has no relationship with the person handing you the document. Elder financial abuse is the most underreported crime in America because it is the hardest to believe, because the person doing it is often the last person you would ever suspect, because love is the most effective blindfold there is. Don't let trust be the reason you lose everything.